idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Saroth the Mage. Saroth is a Scottish occultist, YouTuber, visual artist, poet, kaossilator, and blues harp master. Steve of Saroth the Mage, his real name is Steve. Steve of the Saroth the Mage Experiment makes a virtue out of being an expert in nothing. He describes himself as an enthusiastic dilettante, ex-addict, psychedelic advocate, and experimental magician. Saroth, Steve, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Greetings and thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have
I
you.
will always love your greetings.
It's my catchphrase, greetings.
Greetings.
And we need your we need the tuning bowl, the singing bowl.
Oh yeah, my singing bowl, and now I've added half an hour of kaossilator and screaming harp music. It's going down fabulously well.
I had no idea you were so good.
I wonder what would happen if we mixed the kaossilator with the disruption engine.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, I'm very into my cut-ups and stuff, so you know.
That goes right in
anything
there,
that breaks
right?
down the control system.
That's right, rebel. It's a great honor. Finally, we do get the great Saroth, or Stevie, as Keats calls you.
Yeah.
On
My
Nox
friends call me
Mente.
Stevie usually.
I love
it's
Stevie,
an absolute
so
honor to be here. I hope I can think of enough things to say in 2 hours, because I only do an hour on my own show, and that's pretty exhausting. So if I kind of fade out towards the end, you might just have to tap dance or something for the last half hour.
You're in good hands, trust me.
Yeah.
And also, people should know Saroth is in Scotland, and it's late. It's like 2:00 there, right?
Yes, it is 4 minutes past 2 in the morning.
And it's, of course, in the midweek. And he did not get much of a nap, I imagine. You had DM me saying you were taking a nap, but then you were constantly replying.
Yeah, I was too excited to sleep, you know. So
I promise we'll make this 2 hours go by fast.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, this is through so many, so many other people that we circumambulate around and all that. I met you through CW Chanter's over there. I think.
Yeah.
Is that where?
It's Commonwealth.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, that's kind of been the hub of the community, and that's where kind of my whole YouTube thing started, really.
Yes, I was there in the very, very beginning. You had like 5 followers, and I was 1.
Yeah, that's right. I'm up to a massive 800 and odd now.
You know what's great about that is that's real. People, I didn't know this, that you can pay to have subscribers and pay to have likes and all that.
Bots. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the whole thing about my channel, the whole reason I started it was because I kind of liked CW's realness. And I thought, wow, I found his just observing somebody's life, it was almost like performance art, and I thought, why can't I do that? It's not like I'm an expert in anything. I'm not particularly good at anything, but it's just fun, and I just wanted to invite people around to my house instead of always being in other people's. That's where it started, but that has actually given me the impetus to kind of learn more, and by trying to make the channel more interesting, I've had to make myself a bit more interesting, get back into the magic.
Yes.
So it's kind of propelling me along quite nicely.
It's been a journey. I remember when you were at 125, and you're like, I'm just going to keep it here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What a silly idea that was.
Oh, it's been a journey with you for sure. And so honest. You came on immediately and talked about your, heroin addiction, your drug addictions, and also your wonderful blog, and all that. So it was just so easy to want to tune into. for me at least, because you're bringing in the magic, you're bringing in the honesty, you have grit because you have been through the addiction and life experiences and stuff. So this gives you a depth of presence that at least always, that's the kind of stuff I look forward to hear. So
Thank you very much.
and then of course we've done our videos together.
Yes, we have.
We've done
What's
some
it called
high
again?
art.
Cheating on me
Yes, we
behind
have,
my
and
back
we
there.
should do another one. And
Yes,
of course, there's the Saturday Sideshow, which we recently did, which was wonderful.
fantastic. I loved it. We kept it with the art and the rock and roll going. And I look forward to definitely more of those with the art and the magic and the rock and roll.
Yeah, that's what it's all about for me. Those three sort of combining art, music, poetry, magic, all that stuff, and just chuck it all into a big messy blob with a few
Yes.
beers and a
Yes.
few cigarettes.
Yes. With the wonderful Keats, at the helm.
Yeah.
He was at the helm there, and
Well, I
Davey
certainly couldn't
and
have. I couldn't have. I have no editing skills. I'm not very good technically, so I just press play and go. But Keats was there to hold everything together for me. So
yeah,
So
it was
he's
very
he's
gonzo
become-
of us.
Also, shout
Yeah.
out to Keats, who's in the audience tonight.
Oh,
excellent.
excellent. I can't
Yes.
see chat, so hi everyone.
We all love Keats.
Everyone
Who
says
doesn't love
hi.
Keats? Keats
Very
Ross is
talented. Very talented. I love
awesome.
his music. And,
Oh yeah, everything.
Vibe.
He's so intelligent. That's the thing. That's like
yes,
at
I
the
really
bottom.
enjoyed the. I knew I was coming on, and I listened to his Nox Mente, and I thought, how am I gonna top that? It's not to top anyone. We're all individuals here. There's no competition at all.
No, none. But with that said, let's dive right in. Are you ready, Stevie?
I am ready.
All right, let's go. So let's go back. Let's go way back to the earliest memories you have in this life. And if you could describe them for us, what the world was like, even if it's just the earliest memory, or if it's just the period in which
Yeah.
that memory swims and lives.
Wow, that's a beautifully evocative question. I actually was brought up in a very wonderful time for my family. We had, funnily enough, I was very close to my mum's side of the family, her father and mother, my granddad and grandfather, the Wilson side. I mean, I look like a Wilson. I've got the blue eyes and the bump in the nose. My dad had dark hair and dark eyes, and we lived right next door. My mum and dad had bought a house right next to her mum and dad. So it was like we had almost like a compound, huge back garden. I just remember it being like summer all the time. Obviously, I'm got rose tinted spectacles, and yeah, my grandfather had quite a successful business at that point. My dad was rising in the merchant navy at that time. And then a few years later, it would all fall apart. My granddad was a gambler. My dad was an alcoholic. So things unraveled very quickly after that. But my earliest memories are just of joy, running about the garden, lots of love, absolutely happy memories there.
Were you about 3 when it all kind of changed? How old were you?
It didn't really start to change until my little brother was born, so I was a bit older, maybe 6, 7, and my mum always said that my granddad and granny and granddad made such a huge fuss of me because there was still quite a lot of money, so I got masses of toys and stuff. And by the time he came 6 years later, there was considerably less fuss. So that was a shame, But,
what was your, I love this this description of this early on, how it was always, now we know that this is obviously rose colored glasses, but the description of it is always being bright and beautiful out. You are in the British Isles, so we know,
yes.
that was
It was Aberdeen, so you don't get many
Yes.
sunny days here.
It's exactly the same here. We have like 2 months of some sun. And so, but how was your relationship with the world around you, with the wild, with the wood, with the thicket, nature?
I think, to be honest, and this is probably disappointing for someone who claims to be a magician, but I was always a very urban kind of kid. I loved the neighborhood. I was quite close to the centre of town, so we rarely went to the country. We used to go out for drives on a Sunday afternoon, and instead of going to some beautiful forest or place of natural beauty, my granddad, who was quite eccentric in many ways, as are all the Wilsons, used to just park by the side of the road somewhere, whip out a picnic table. So I always felt more comfortable in the city than I did in the country. And it's only in recent years that I've really expanded into nature. Because my granddad was quite well known in the neighbourhood. He had a baker that was just at the top of the road. That was what he did. He had a few baker shops, and my mum worked in it. So there was a real little. It was like a village in those days, in the late '60s, early '70s. It just so changed now. There was the greengrocer with his pencil behind his ear and Mr. Black in his apron, and it was really like something out of 1940s sort of Second World War movies. It's very quaint.
So back here in the early days, what would you attribute? Okay, so what kind of pop culture, and this is just young, it doesn't have to be the earliest stuff, but what kind of pop culture were you absorbing? And as we know, you became the person that you are now, which is you're very astute on some really obscure musical movements that happened and all this. I always admire that. I feel like I'm on par with you. So what was the music, cartoons, TV programs? What was the pop culture you were enjoying early on?
The very first program that I actually became kind of obsessed with, and there's a stage in childhood where you're not quite sure if the things are real or not, like Banana Splits. Does anyone remember them?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. La, 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 la,
Yeah,
la.
that's it. So they used to be on Saturday mornings, and I absolutely adored them. They had that kind of rock band kind of thing going on, and they were just that fantastic trippy kind of vibe to them. And then, funnily enough, when I'm remembering now, all my memories seem to be in that more than my parents' house, my grandparents' house. I remember watching it there, although I don't think I actually did watch it there. It's just how your memory kind of frames things. And also, my granddad had a huge. I've actually written a blog post about this. He had a huge wooden radiogram, very old-fashioned. It was actually bought in 1969. And what he did was he just phoned Bruce Miller's, got them to send them their best radiogram, and just said, "Give me the top 50 albums." So it's like a musical snapshot of that tiny little period in 1969. And I found a Rolling Stones record called Through the Past Darkly, which was in the hexagonal sleeve mono recording. I wish I had it now. It'd probably be worth, not greatly, but 50 quid or something. And that's when I fell in love with the idea of being a teenager and rock music. And you can just hear the dulcimer. It was Brian Jones's. Just after he died, they released it as a kind of tribute to him, and that began a lifelong obsession with Brian Jones, because he was just such a fascinating character. And when I heard that music, I thought, wow, just the exotic, trippy 60s. You could smell the cannabis smoke in the acid. And at a very early age, like I must have been 9 or 10, I thought, wow, I so want to be a teenager and do that. And I did.
Yes.
Which of the Banana Split shorts that were embedded in that show was your favorite? I'm guessing it was Arabian Nights.
Yes, absolutely. Arabian Nights. I loved, yeah.
Size of an elephant. Gulliver's Travels and...
Gulliver's Travels, yeah.
There was one more, I can't remember what it was, but yeah.
Oh, Jerry, link some of that stuff up for people. It's so genius.
Yeah, I used to go about saying "size of a donkey" and stuff all the time when I was a child.
Size of an elephant.
I'm sure it really annoyed my parents.
Oh, it's fantastic. So back here in the early days, what was your experience with dreaming?
I had some hideous nightmares when I was a child. I don't know if that was due to the kind of psychic stress of uh, my dad's drinking. My mum would occasionally join in, and that's very unsettling. You know, when you've got, I think that's why I always think of my grandparents as a place of safety, because my, I've got, you know, most Scots people have alcoholism all over the place in their family lines. So my grandfather was the middle son of about 8 children, dirt poor. His father worked in the Rubesville quarry, a very rough job. Sometimes he would come home with some money. Sometimes he would spend it all in the pub on a Friday night. So my granddad hated drinking. So I could always find refuge from the craziness that was going on with my mum and dad. So one of the dreams was, I think this also relates to I was extremely good, very good at reading and English and art as a child. I really struggled with numbers. So one of these horrifying dreams was I'd be on a board, like a game square, like snakes and ladders almost, and there'd be this witch dressed in rags, very, you know, just your archetypal witch, and she'd be screaming out numbers, and I'd be on this board, completely confused as to what I was supposed to do. And I've never forgotten that dream. The other one was I'd be in some kind of undefined space, and I'd have a tiny little like ball bearing in one hand, which was incredibly heavy, and I'd have a huge ball in the other hand, which was incredibly light. And it used to throw me into kind of vertigo type feeling, a really kind of sick feeling, and I'd wake up terrified. And another one was, the last one was these kind of ape men creatures. Again, I was on like graph paper, and they were rolling boulders down a hill at me. And I would have these dreams again and again for many years. Well, not many years, but a couple at least.
Did you, back in this period, were you watching shows like Planet of the Apes and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All that good stuff, the giants?
I love Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with the weird and the sci-fi, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that actually, I'd never even made that connection, but that could have been something there.
It's immediately what I thought about with that last, and I love all of this, but you know, you are of that generation with that Pluto affliction there. So
what about
with
Land of the Lost?
Which one, Jared?
Land of the Lost.
Yes, I love that.
Usually falls into that.
I've seen that one.
As an American
Saroth,
show.
Stevie, Land of the Lost. Oh, so good. I bet you have, and you're just not familiar with it.
Yeah, was it black and white?
No.
No, color.
No.
If you saw it, I think you would be familiar with it. You're just not remembering the name.
It was this guy and his 2 kids got caught in a whirlpool and were sent back in time to the land of dinosaurs.
Oh wow! Oh, Land of the Lost. Yeah, I think I do.
Yes.
I used to love dinosaurs, and I used to love those really badly animated, you know, dinosaur films and Sinbad, The Adventures of Sinbad and the Skeletons. You know, anything.
I love all that. Oh my God, Jason and the Argonauts, and
the Harryhausen stuff.
Anything that had special effects in it and was kind of fantasy. You know, I loved it, and because my dad was a sailor, he called our golden Labrador Sinbad. So that was another little link.
Really great days for all of that kind of sci-fi and otherworldly stuff. Did you, so back here, so you had these nightmares with that territory? A lot of times we encounter sleep paralysis. So did young Stevie encounter sleep paralysis at all?
No, never. I had a friend at this is in secondary school, and he was the first person I'd ever heard that had experienced this thing. He would say it feels like there's somebody sitting on my chest. You know, it's the hag. He didn't exactly describe it as a hag. I think he possibly didn't want to, you know, but I'm sure that's what was happening to him, and it really freaked him out. I'd never even heard of sleep paralysis. No, it was just very vivid, repeating dreams, and I would realize in the dream, oh no, I'm going into this dream again, and try and wake myself up.
And so also, while we're back here in the past, did you have childhood fears, you know, something in the woods, something under the bed, you know, those kinds of things?
You know, not that I can remember. Nothing like supernatural fears, I don't think. I was never very afraid as a child of anything, really. My mum had a terrible fear of snakes, which is quite Freudian. And I remember one time that my granddad taking me to well, we call that a zoo in Aberdeen, but it's really like two donkeys and a tortoise and a gift shop. And I bought a rubber snake from the gift shop thinking it would be fun. And I held it up at the window and she burst into tears and I felt dreadful. But no, I didn't. I really didn't.
Very bad laddie.
Anything. Yeah, no, it was bad. It was naughty. I felt terribly guilty when she cried.
Your poor mom. So
do that again.
And then also with that, I kind of wanted to, were you much of a rule breaker rebel early on? When does that kind of come in?
I was actually, according to my mom, an absolutely amazingly good, not only a baby, but like at primary school, I was very conscientious, quite a worrier actually. I think again because of my family situation being a bit chaotic, I felt just anxious all the time. So when I got to around about puberty, around about primary 7, I consciously made the decision just to stop worrying. I almost remember making that decision, and then from there on, I just got really kind of out of control. Not in a nasty way. You know, I never hurt anyone or got in fights, but I just wouldn't pay attention at school. Refused to do any homework. Just did pretty much what I wanted. And because my dad was at sea a lot of the time, he was the discipline man of the family. I pretty much got to do what I wanted, you know. By the time I was 10, 11, 12, I mean, I had a first line of speed, I think 11 at a youth club disco. And that's when the slowed, I wouldn't even say it was a decline at first, you know, it was again, a kind of, it felt wonderful to be feeling all grown up, and all my friends were a good few years older than I was. And, you know, they were doing slightly unhealthy things and I was kind of joining in, but I really didn't feel any, I didn't feel like it was bad. It just felt so fun. And I wanted to be, you know, at discos, listening to music. I grew up very fast. This is something I talked about with Keats. We both feel like we grew up a bit too fast.
Yeah, I was doing all that stuff between 10 and 12 too. I had my first acid hit. I think I was 11 or 12.
Smoking cigarettes as well.
I never smoked cigarettes, but I certainly did everything else. and was out there. I had a fake ID and was just carrying on, having a damn good time, I might add. And everyone, of course, is of age or a little bit younger. No one was my age, and as you know, and so it puts one in a position of a juxtaposition of generations. There's like a bridging there. So you're one with these people that come from basically another generation before you that are at the time hip, you know, like you want to be there wild and crazy, and then yours. So which are in school
and
mostly,
it made me a lot more popular with the kids my age. So, you know, I had lots of girlfriends and stuff because I smoked and I knew this
You were a
guy and
bad
that
boy.
guy and used to go all nighters. I was a bad boy.
Did you have a cool Fonzie jacket too?
Yeah, you know what? I absolutely did. I went through a Grease phase. I saw the film Grease like
That was in
21
'78.
times one summer.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was how old? I was born in '69, so
You were 9.
How old? 9?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Mr.
went through my
Train
Grease
Spotting
phase,
here.
and I couldn't get a proper leather jacket, so I got this kind of 50s sort of vinyl thing, and I stuck a tiny little grease patch on the back. It was like my T-Birds jacket. Horribly embarrassing when I think about it. And then not long after that, I saw the News of the World front page. Sid is dead, and I saw a picture of Sid Vicious.
Yes.
With his hair and his padlock, and I was like, "Who is that guy?" So I instantly became obsessed with punk rock and bought a pair of tartan bondage trousers when I was like 10, and used to hang around this shop called Slaughter, which was like the only punk clothing shop in Aberdeen, and I became a little mascot for the shop. Oh man.
It's excellent. I love these stories. So, all right. So, winding back and staying back in this early period. So, pre the psychedelics and the speed and all that good stuff. Give us an if there is a change here. Was the dream landscape, the architecture of the dream? What was that like? And if it did change post getting your hands on psychedelics and speed and all that stuff and having a now a whole different life, what were the changes?
There was a dramatic shift in focus. The nightmares faded really quickly. They just seemed to be when I was kind of struggling to cope at primary school for a couple of years. I really started to find my feet, started to feel quite confident in myself. So the next kind of phase of dreaming was I dreamt about this girl who had never, I'd have these romantic layers, and not necessarily sexual things. It was just like, I'd meet this girl in a dream, couldn't quite see her face. I'd wake up in the morning feeling all like, oh, that was amazing. I totally really chased this girl through my dreams for like 10 years. So that was the next phase that I remember, is this constant longing for like a soulmate in female form.
That's and as you probably know, that's just classic. And too bad you didn't have wet dreams. I mean, I live for those still. They're my favorite. And I love a hot, sexy dream, and especially if it goes to fruition. I mean, it's the good things in life, baby. So
I
this
don't
dream
think I
girl.
gave my wet dreams a chance because I was emptying them too quick for them
You
to build
really
up.
at that age? So,
Yeah,
oh my, that's that hot Scottish blood. So anyway, or
oh yeah.
yes, and so the dream girl, 10 years. Describe, which is the anima, of course, but describe her to us if you recall.
Well, this is the thing. I could never remember really what she looked like. I did meet, I fell heavily in love in first year when I went to, we call it secondary school, you'd call it high school. There's this beautiful, I thought when she first walked into class, because I'd been at 2 of the schools, we moved around a lot because one of my dad's tactics to raise money was to sell a big house and move into a slightly smaller house, live on the money for a while. Because by this time he was captain in the merchant navy. Captains are allowed to drink in their cabins, so he was starting to lose one job after the other at this point. And as his finances were going, my grandfather would have to bail him out, so the whole family was going down, down, down. From a quite a nice middle class suburban sort of lifestyle where we're selling houses and things were getting desperate. So I actually went to 2 of the schools in that catchment area. So I knew a lot of the kids already, but I didn't know this girl. And when she first walked into the classroom, I was just, she had jet black hair, piercing green eyes. And I just thought, wow, I actually remember me thinking, she just looks like a little doll. And so we got together, and she was pretty much my on and off girlfriend from first year, age 11 or 12, till I was like 21. I mean, there was loads of times where we split up and we saw other people, and we pretty much were quite, we weren't very faithful to each other, but she was a constant thread. So I began to think it was her, and we kind of, and her parents didn't particularly approve of me, or they did at first. That this jealous girl had gone and said, "Oh, he drinks and he smokes and he does this and he does that." So after being really close with her family, I was banned, and then that Romeo and Juliet thing started to happen, where it was like forbidden love. So she would sneak round to see me and would have, rendezvous, secret rendezvous and stuff. So I kind of identified her as the dream girl. And there was one. I'm just going with these memories here, but there was one time I'd gone out, I hadn't seen her for a little while, got really drunk, and we were staying in this grotty house in a council estate at this point, and it was just so it kind of was a fruition of this dream. So I'd come in, gone to bed, and she had come round to my house, let herself in, and just got into bed with me. So when I woke up in the morning, there she was, and it was like, wow, it's like she did materialize out of a dream. That really meant a lot to me then. Wonderful thing to happen.
At any point did she enter, so the real girl that was now playing part of that projective idea of your inner animus that had haunted you really, did she ever enter in your dreams and become did she ever fill that role within your dreamscape?
Yes, I think she did. Yeah, I got quite obsessed. Um, when we were separated for periods, I would really be pining after her. So I think that's very perceptive. I'd never even thought of it like that, but she did actually step into that role of this. But there was still some other quality that very rightly you call the animus, that special magical quality. Sometimes I'd dream it was like a celebrity, and I'd wake up and think, "Oh wow, I was with, I can't believe I was with," and then, "Oh yeah, shit, it was a dream." So there was she was a mortal woman. She could never live up to that magical idea of this phantom
Of the
woman.
great anima, yeah. It so
Yeah.
so at this time too, what did the dreamscape look like for you? What was it? Color, black and white? Were you able
Yeah.
to smell, sensate
Color?
stuff?
No, no, no. I don't even know if I dream. I still really don't. Yeah, I guess I do dream in language now, but when I look back on the dreams, they're extremely visual, and yeah, it's actually hard to remember now what exactly my dreamscape was like. I think my my daily life got so weird and disjointed that my waking hours became kind of more extraordinary than my dream life in a way, because by this time I was smoking a lot of weed and really going deeper into I discovered Jim Morrison and the Doors, and really exploring that kind of dark psychic territory. I'd stay in my room for days. I think I'd left school by this time, never any intention of getting a job, just drinking, smoking dope, playing music. Yeah, so it's actually I've actually, and I think with all the harmful drugs that I've done since, and this is a salutary tale, I've lost so much of my life. There's like huge chunks of it I just simply can't remember.
Yeah, and that happens. It's also one of those things we ponder here as well, because the past is you really can't hold on to it. There are, with evidence that it existed through video and photos and art and architecture and all this stuff, but it's quite elusive when we think about the idea of memories and living, especially when we're
Yeah,
talking about one's own memories, what's real. And then when we start overlapping dreams, versus memories, these boundaries are very thin. And then you layer in drugs.
Yeah. Lots of drugs.
And then we have a psychedelic experience going on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I have heard that when we remember things, we aren't actually remembering the real event. We're recreating it in our minds each time.
Yes. Absolutely. This is how we do. Well, this is one of those dynamics that happens even when we encounter something in the now and we don't quite understand it, and the brain pieces it together with all the data it has to understand it. So, like I had a Sasquatch experience, and my brain wanted to tell me it was a bear. So my logical side had to say, wait, let's analyze this. And so, this is even furthered. We get more depth even with this dynamic, with this neuro dynamic when we go back to the past. It's another thing I find fascinating when people get hypnotized, whatever that really is. So in the dreamscape, were you at all the younger Saroth? So this is just, let's part your life into two right now. So 25 and under. Did you experience anything that you would consider lucid dreaming, or from there up, lucid dreaming to full on astral projection?
Unfortunately, not. And this is something that I've always kind of, with being so interested in magic and the occult, I just, so many other occultists have had these experiences where they've seen, spirits from an early age, or had psychic experiences. My granny was very psychic, and my girlfriend currently, she's very psychic as well. She's got red hair and everything. But I have never had a what I would call, well, no. When I started doing magic, I have had paranormal experiences, but until I was deliberately inducing it, I had to work very hard. I think I've always been quite at heart a kind of rational, sensible kind of kid, and I think I absolutely put a filtered any of that stuff out just through. I was brought up. My dad was a convinced atheist, and we just didn't entertain any ideas of supernatural. None of my friends were really into supernatural stuff, so it never happened for me, sadly. I have had some lucid dream stuff more recently, but I've kind of worked at that, Everything psychic or paranormal that's ever happened to me has been something that no, actually, not quite sought, but that, I've been having Reiki when I had an extremely strange vision, which we can mainly get to later
Yeah, we'll
on.
get
But
to that
I
in the
don't think
modern
I'm
stuff.
naturally clairvoyant. Yeah, I don't think I'm naturally clairvoyant. Unfortunately, it'd make things a whole lot easier if I was.
Yes. You said something that I'm interested in. So, give us a little snapshot of your granny that was psychic. Tell us about her.
Wow. Well, I mean, she just would always know these funny little things. It wasn't so much, we didn't really talk about it much. Like I say, we were a very strange family. We had a great talent for not talking about anything important or meaningful. Like my dad could get drunk, smash up the whole house, punch the neighbor, and then the next morning nobody would talk about it. I could get taken home by the police, drunk at parties and stuff, which happened more than once. Nobody would talk about it in the morning. So, but as my granny was getting older, she took to her bed 10 years. When she was about 80, she just decided that she wasn't going to, I can't, my legs are sore. I'm convinced there was nothing actually wrong with her. My mum had to kind of fetch and carry for her. But she started having these, there is a name for it, but she would say, "Oh, I saw a great show last night. There was a wedding, and they were all wearing old-fashioned clothes." It didn't seem like she knew really what was going on. I wouldn't say she was a wise woman, But and she was saying, "Oh, there was a funny man sitting by my bed last night. He had huge, bulgy eyes." And it sounded quite horrific to me, and I just thought, well, you know, the veil's getting thin there. But she lived till she was 91. But she had, I think she was from Huntly, which is a very rural place outside Aberdeen. Her father was a horse breeder, so I think they were much more in touch with like the legends of fairies and
the folkish stuff.
weird Scottish folklore. Yeah,
which is really juicy. It's very juicy stuff. So in your house, were you raised with a religion?
no, absolutely not. My dad, like I say, was an atheist. My granddad was an atheist. My mum's dad was also there's a guy called Willie Hamilton, a kind of anti-monarchist communist dude who he quite admired. So religion was not a thing. My dad's dad had been a Freemason, but I never really knew him. His parents died when I was really young. I did find his like framed Freemason scrolls and all that kind of stuff. I would have loved to know him and you know talk to him about that kind of stuff. So no, no religion. My mum was a kind of sentimental kind of Christian. Occasionally, she would watch songs of praise and have a little tear in her eye after a couple of glasses of wine. But no, it was in Aberdeen is a very, very secular city. I think I read somewhere that it's got the lowest church attendance in the whole of the UK. It's a godless place, is Aberdeen. So
I
there's
love
no religion.
Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And we have such amazing people there that we all know. There's like a group of you there that are just like some of my favorite people.
Weirdos, yeah.
It's so wonderful. Yeah, the godless city.
Yes. It is. I had a friend, a Russian artist, woman, came to visit once, and all the churches, or many of them on the main streets, have been turned into nightclubs, and she was appalled and couldn't believe it that would turned these beautiful church buildings into places of drinking and revelry. But yeah, that's how we do it in Aberdeen.
So when you were so now and you know, this is how our Nox Mente stuff kind of unravels and unfolds with the dream life is the template, but depending on the person, I like to weave in and out of their narrative that I'm aware of. So, and how that affects and impacts the dream life, which then affects and impacts the life that people know about them. So, you know, our community, you know, knows you, and you've put up a lot of raw video talking about your struggles with certain things and your triumphs with others. Tell us about how you first started getting connected into, and you have done this on your channel, but for people that may not know, into magical workings, and then relate it to possibly the dream world and your experience in the dream world. We can overlap that here, Saroth, and the dream world could be your active imagination world, the world in which is between the veils, and we get that with doing magical work, as some people may not realize that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've always loved to. I've always loved, you know, at school, my creative writing was like off the charts. It went down very well with all my English teachers. I've read at a very early age, so you know, I got a lot from books. How I got into magic was, bizarrely, I found a book called Magic and Occult Primer by David Conway in the school library, and it had
fantastic
like
book.
Yeah.
Surprisingly,
I ordered it many years later, and of course I had it for a couple of years as a child and lost it or lent it to somebody and never got it back, and I'd kind of built it into this fantastic thing. Then when I got another copy, I was like, oh, it's, you know, it's good, but not as good as I remembered it.
No, but I stumbled upon
so I
it the
got
same
that.
way. absolutely the same way. I was like,
Yeah,
whoa, who is this David Conway? And then looking
yeah,
back, but it was a gem to find at the time when there
it
was
was.
not
And
much
in
out
those
there,
days,
Saroth.
that was no, absolutely not. Especially not in a small town like Aberdeen. You just could not. You didn't meet people that were into the occult. There were no occult bookshops. There were no New Age shops. There was nothing. So this book really, it was fate that it fell into my hands, and that was the first time I'd ever read about the astral plane. And I somehow conflated the astral plane with a kind of still childish kind of notion of this other universe, like Narnia. Or I loved this film when I was much younger. I think it's called Jamie and the Toll Booth, where this kid has a cartoon dog. I used to love the mixture of real, real film, and then you'd have an animated character, the mixing of the worlds like that. So I always fantasized about, excuse me, finding an entrance, like a secret entrance. There was a lane. I lived in a beautiful part of town. It was urban, but we had a huge park called the Duthie Park, which figures quite largely in my story because we used to spend so much time there and there used to be mushrooms there. There was a lane, and it was all just like you'd expect a lane to another world, and it had a big door all covered in sort of ivy and grown over. And if I could have got through that door, I was convinced that it would lead me to some kind of Narnia or something. Because I think any kid that's got living with an alcoholic and feels kind of trapped and can't wait to grow up and get out of there, the idea of opening a door and going into these magical adventures. So that's where books came in. That's where the idea of magic and the astral plane. I guess it was as a place to escape to.
Yes, absolutely. And it should be said, today everything is available everywhere. On the internet, there's just too many books on these
Yeah,
subjects. Back in the day, there were very few books to be had. And so we were able to get the juicy spiritualist stuff that did bring, Madame Blavatsky and the Crowley stuff, but there were still very few alternate sources. There was, of course, Sybil Leek, and um, you know, uh, my good friend Safaras and Saunders and all that, but it was still really slim pickings.
yeah,
And the stuff that was starting to come out was so light. It was, Wicca light.
yeah. It was, yeah.
So
Although
people to
I did
yes.
find a copy of Alistair Crowley's. I wish I had it now. It was a hardback. It had a purple fly cover, and it was in bargain books for like incredibly cheap. Beautiful paper, beautiful edition. But of course, at that age, I could not understand one word. But I kind of got it in a way. But I thought, well, I'm not clairvoyant, so I can't possibly do this. But it fascinated me, and it would serve me well later on. I'm maybe
That's
jumping
more
ahead a bit there, but that was
serendipity.
around about the same time.
Yeah, that's more serendipity to have that fall into your hands, though. And I mean, I'm one of those people that thinks there are people just born to it. And
Oh yeah,
y-
I do think that.
yeah.
You're either attracted to it, and you're attracted to it because you're supposed to do it, or you're just not, and it just never figures in your life at all.
Yeah, and there are lots of scholars in the occult and the occult sciences that are just not practicers. They're not there's no praxis there, and that's fine. They're not, but those of us that just come with the ways, we come with the ways, and then the sources find us. Right? We're naturally there already. How was your first experience with doing ritual when you decided to lay it out? Sorry about my dogs.
It wasn't. I mean, because I was pursuing a path of, we're getting into my later teens now. It was always in the background, and I also had a slightly before this. One of the few things my dad and I would do together was watch like the Hammer horror double bills
Oh,
on a
all
Saturday
up
night.
to Hammer. Oh God,
Yeah, I
yes.
love Hammer.
Oh, the
So there was
best.
you'd have the trendy sort of 60s Satanists popping about to the devil a daughter, the devil rides out, Dennis Wheatley. So that gave me an idea of what occultism was like. But I still didn't think it was kind of realistic for me to do it. I did kind of experiment in my bedroom, but not really. I was very scatterbrained, and I was more into art and poetry, painting, drawing, music, girls, and it just seemed I just don't really have the time to stay in my bedroom and study and work magic. So it really wasn't until I'd kind of been through my first phase of addiction. Well, that's not quite true. I did practice some of the Crowley Star Sapphire and stuff in my bedroom with some success. I felt like I was getting somewhere, but demons didn't appear in a puff of smoke and start giving me like magical objects and stuff. So I really didn't take magic seriously until as recently as sort of 2000 is when I first started doing rituals properly. It was with an ex-girlfriend by that time. We got a book, Isis Magic by Isadora Forrest, I think it was. And then that's when it really kicked off in earnest. So the results came so quickly. Within a few months of starting the rituals, I was full on channeling entities, getting pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff, which I would kind of scry and just go into a kind of trance, and I'm not quite sure how I managed it. And then various voices would speak through me. She would write it down by hand while I was speaking it. Then I had a bizarre out-of-body experience while I was getting Reiki, and that Reiki is not supposed to do that, as far as I know. But I was sitting on the chair, and the next minute I'm kind of shaking. There's tears rolling down my eyes, and I'm looking at Earth from way up in space. And I had a voice, and I really wouldn't have expected it to say this because of my interest in Crowley and kind of more traditional magic-y magic with a K. But it was like, we are the Pleiadians, we are the Pleiadians, this is the Earth. And it gave me this ecological, I have told the story before, of course, but it gave me an ecological message. My first response was not to say, okay, I must go out and save the planet. It was like, that seemed kind of almost in a way false, although it was probably the most real psychic experience I've ever had. There's no drugs involved, no mushrooms. It was a spontaneous out-of-body experience. The Earth looked absolutely beautiful. It looked like that famous picture of the blue marble. It had like a halo of light around it. It was, when I look back on it now, I was like, why did I not take that more seriously? And continue. That was a major lead, and some people would die for that sort of experience. But at the time, I was still 1 foot in that world and 1 foot into selling drugs on the streets. So that's the two worlds don't go together very well.
I find it interesting that this was the Pleiadians. What did you know about the Pleiadians at the time? I mean, it just seems, and it's way before I think a lot of that stuff became so popularized as it is now.
Yeah. I didn't really know anything about the Pleiadians. I think I'd heard them in connection with some New Agey. There were some New Agey books that I was kind of aware of, although I wasn't interested in it. But I was almost disappointed that it wasn't Horus or something more traditionally magic-y. I was like,
a little more grit.
601. I think the Pleiadians is just an upgrade from the Egyptians.
Yeah. Why the Pleiadians, and why this ecological message? I'm not really interested in ecology. I was deeply selfish and hedonistic, and it was like, well, if you're looking for someone to save the planet, you picked the wrong guy. But I almost got the feeling it was like a kind of something false about it. Something didn't ring true. Like I wondered, are the CIA putting out like weird frequencies? I was maybe slightly conspiratorially minded in these days. But
it's likely that it's something like that. I mean, it could be an AI for all we know.
It could be. Yeah, I mean, it did seem just something inauthentic about it. But I've always had these twin impulses. One part of me wants to move towards something, and the other half saying no, pull away. And I think that's caused a lot of tension in my life. It's only lately I've started to integrate all these competing strains and tensions. So when I was getting the channelings, I was into it at the time, but I began to even get suspicious of them and think, okay, is this just bullshit coming out of my own? And I'm open-minded about it. I don't think that there was some august angelic beings necessarily speaking through me, but I was definitely tapping into some deep source of fantastic material. It was very beautiful, poetic, made a lot of sense, the stuff. And my friend still not lives by them, but she certainly had never doubted the authenticity of them. Whereas I was like, oh, this is getting a bit much. And because there became an expectation that I could just do it, at the drop of a hat, I began to kind of pull away, and again, I got back into my wild ways. So it was a false start in many ways, and it's only recently where I seem to get really into something, and then the call of the wild, and I'll drift back into. Although I haven't, I've been clean for a good while now, and I don't see any possibility of me going back. That used to be the thing. I'd feel like I was advancing spiritually, and then I'd just suddenly, oh fuck it, I'm going back to my old friends and hanging about. So I've only recently put that in perspective because I'd written it off as pure fantasy. It was all, I was very much into the psychological method of magic. And it's only like so recently, I mean, like maybe a month ago, that I did a specific working to contact a specific entity in a dream. Didn't actually sleep that night for some reason. And I believe that I did. And then all of a sudden, I started my Golden Dawn grade work again, practicus. And since then, I'm on a real roll. But like, if you'd done this interview 2 months ago, I would have probably told you I'm sick of magic. It's not working. It's not worth the effort. It's not worth the money I spend on books, and I'm going to walk away. It was almost like that. Although I knew I wouldn't really walk away, but sometimes it's frustrating the amount of work I have to put in for slow, gradual rewards. The Golden Dawn system is not the glamorous evocating spirits, and it's quite dull and workmanlike. But I have been doing evocations. I've finally accepted that there is a vibrant and living spirit world. The evidence is just so heavily against the psychological model now. And although I've never actually seen a spirit, I've had my channeling experiences, I've had some visionary experiences, but I've never felt like when I invoke one, it's there. I've never felt that presence. So that's the next phase of my work, is I really want to connect and see what everyone else is talking about, because with the renaissance of interest in grimoires, you've got Stephen Skinner and people like Jake Stratton Kent and all those guys. There's really been a rebirth in interest in the old magic.
Yeah, is definitely a renaissance. I don't know if it was Keats and I talking about this. It's certainly something we would talk about, but I do think that the cult of psychology has done a lot of damage. It might have been, I don't know, it's one of our friends. The cult of psychology, and I am of this school. I came up through Jungian praxis and all this, and I'm certainly, gone through analysis, and uh I'm not putting it down in any way, but it has certainly taken a lot of magic out of magic, and
That's exactly what I was going to say.
yeah, it scrubs it all down, and especially when we start hearing the real life stories of people like Freud and Jung behind the veil, because all the personal stuff has been locked down for so long, that we start to see how messy and sloppy they were, and how deeply occulted they were. And of course it's to the the cult the cults that have come around them, and especially in psychoanalysis, are a gas. They've created, whole generations of careers based on just the dry stuff. And now all the stories are really coming forward, how much occult stuff was there, how much sloppiness in developing these theories, and all of it is just, it's juicy. I'm so glad we're able to finally start seeing this, and that the cult of psychology is being balanced back down now, because everyone's wanted to rest their laurels on it, and I've fought all along, even being a Jungian. So I'm interested in backing up here, and would you give us an idea of the mechanism in which you were channeling? So, like, what are the P's and Q's of that? Because it's the
Okay.
channeling things always flexed me and excited me at the same time. It's so
Oh, I've lost your audio there, Nish.
She prematurely muted.
did you hear me with the question?
No, not
No,
really.
I didn't.
Oh dear. With the mechanisms of channeling, so it's such a provocative subject, and it's, I mean, when we think about it, all the tomes are including the Bible, and all this stuff's channeled information. And so I'm sure there's a whole debate there. I don't plan on ever getting in with anyone that wants to come at me. Keep it to yourself. But what was the mechanism of channeling that you engaged yourself in and found yourself doing that brought forth this information? What are the
Okay.
nuts and bolts of
Well,
it?
I never set out. I never set out to channel. That's the very first thing I have to say. We were doing rituals, the two of us, my female friend and I. We were doing the Isis magic. We'd become votaries of Isis. We'd tied our texts, and we were doing everything by that textbook. So we would do a ritual purification and consecration with incense and Isis water, which is just basically salt water with some rose petals and stuff in it. We would do, it's basically like a Golden Dawn pentagram ritual, but it's Isisified, if you like. And then we would meditate. And in one of these meditation sessions, I just felt like there was something trying to come through me and talk. I thought it would be a kind of one-off weird event. I didn't even know whether I should even say anything. And I thought, well, maybe this is just for me. And it became so strong, I just had to say, look, I think I'm going to have to say, I know it's a bit weird, because, coming from that psychological model, you don't think it's a spirit talking to you. You think, okay, there's something coming up from my subconscious here. And it just came unbidden. And pretty much every time we did that same set of ritual actions, it would have the same result. And of course, it builds. So each conversation is kind of picking up where the last one came off. There's different entities coming in and out. We've got some absolutely good information, but we also, as you always do, we've got some utter wrong nonsense information. But we'd also been experimenting. I've never channeled. I never do any magic when I'm on like high dose psilocybin. I do the rituals before and after, and that's just its own experience. But I think the psilocybin experiences around about that time had definitely opened the door. I mean, the first psilocybin experiences that I ever had, the first proper, because sometimes you don't know the right ones. But the first one I ever had was I had a complete. I saw the magical world. I felt the energy of trees. So it confuses me why I didn't see that as, yes, this is confirmation of the world is full of spirits and energies, and but I still was stuck in this kind of materialist, logical, scientific. Nothing can be supernatural. Of course, spirits don't need to be supernatural. That it's just unexplained science, really. So, yeah, if you get me, I've gone kind of forward and back on that one a little bit. It's not easy for me to explain or describe.
Well, I respect this about you going backwards and forwards on it, because it, there's a lot of stigma attached to it. And I do the same thing still. I have knee-jerk reactions when I watch some
Yeah.
channelers.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, this is bollocks. This is
Yeah.
complete
But some of it is,
other
some of it
gibberish. And yeah.
is just clearly people kind of fooling themselves or trying to fool other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was attracted to CW Chanter, because I'd just come out of that period and I became kind of disillusioned with it. I think that was also to do with, interpersonal stuff to do with my working partner. And then in Blue CW Chanter saying it's all bullshit. And I was like, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
It is. But just
You
recently
were
have I been
also
able
drying
to.
out at that time
Yeah.
too. You were just
Yeah,
recently
absolutely.
drying out.
Yeah. So I think I got a little bit scared of it, and I didn't want it to be demanded of me anymore. I wanted the person that was writing it. I was like, well, if I can do it, could you try? I didn't want the responsibility and the pressure of having to kind of perform. So I walked away from it for a good while, and just I kept on doing the Golden Dawn stuff, but I really wasn't interested in the frills and I didn't want spirits to come in and start talking through me. I just wanted to find what I thought was like a true magic path, because that had almost happened by accident, and I wanted to be in control. And I had these kind of false ideas about what magic is, because magic is just what happens while you're doing certain things. It's not like it has to be like Crowley did it, or it has to be like Rigardi did it, or any other of these guys. It's a very individual thing. Everybody's got their own. It's like music, and no two artists are the same.
Wait, so let's weave this into the dream narrative. So this, now we can look at you here and now, and through the scope of your life now. And so give us an idea of how, and I know recently you've really been trying to work, you're doing that kind of work now. So what is the dreamscape like for you now, especially since you're working on lucidity and all this stuff? How do you experience it as a realm, as a place that's not this place?
I have to say that I've got a major impediment going on with my dreaming, because of being a heroin addict for so long. It's like extremely physical body, but there's no denying. You're not. It's a physical reality. It's like you're hungry or you're thirsty. So still, my body has not recovered. I'm still on a 2 milligrams of Suboxone. Um, that keeps my body kind of half in withdrawal, like 50% of the time. So in my dreams, my body is still trying to score. So much of my time in dreams is spent with random kind of druggy kind of situations, trying to score. You can never get high in a dream. So unfortunately, a lot of it is still bogged down with that. And if I'd known that this lockdown was going to happen and it had been so long, I swear I would have just said, right. I tried to do it. When was it? It was 3 years ago. I tried to come off, and it was just so hideous that I ended up kind of giving up 3 weeks in. That's funnily enough when I started watching CW Chanter and getting involved with the kind of online community, if you like, because I was so isolated. And coming into chat and saying hello to people, it was contact that I really badly needed. So I have had some success with lucidity, because I found out if you give yourself like 20 minutes of sleep, and then like deliberately wake yourself up every 20 minutes, you start to gain control. You start to realize that you are in a dream, but it's still not completely successful, because I keep getting dragged back into this kind of Barosian land of the dead. I don't know if you've read his theories on dreams, that he talks about this place where he calls it the land of the dead, where you can't get anything to eat. It's all these kind of lost souls wandering about, and I unfortunately I spend a lot of my dream time in there. So I'm hoping to break out of there soon.
With your magical praxis where it is currently, because I think anyone that is your friend has been following you on your channel, you know, you've been all over the board in the last few years, and it's been interesting to watch. I mean, you had your brief skit with Christianity with Robert, and
Yep.
I love this about you, Stevie. I absolutely just adore how open you are to the world around you and how willing you are. I mean, you dive into something and give it your all. And I think this says a huge amount about your personality and your curiosity, and that you're not a closed-in bitter person whatsoever. You're still, it's clear that you still find mystery in the world.
Oh
So,
gosh, and
and
everything.
that you're seeking. When should we stop seeking? I mean, I feel like we should never stop seeking.
No.
So what kind of praxis are you in right now that seems to be working? Now, I personally have enjoyed how you take the Holy Sacrament, which is the sacred mushroom, and and then let that inform you as to, like, through the etheric magical ride that is that, and then you come back from these journeys and process, you do the process work, and unfortunately a lot you've done that in public for us to all go along with you on that journey, which has just been remarkable over the years. So what kind of work are you doing magically currently, and how has everything that's come before it filled this into where you are? Are things being, are you successful currently with your magical workings?
I am. Not all the time, you know. It's never an exact science. You know, after the ISIS magic, I moved on to just a self-initiated Golden Dawn magic manual, Kabbalah magic by Liam Thomas Christopher. I wasn't particularly attracted to Kabbalistic magic. It was just one of the paths, and it almost, you know, I would have probably temperamentally gone for something more like Thelema or something, but it just so happened that this book fell off a shelf when my friend was in Treadwell's in London. She brought the book back, and I thought, this is a pretty solid base. You know, most modern magic comes from the Golden Dawn. You know, Crowley just kind of added his own little touches here and there, and I thought this is going to be a good firm base. It is not fireworks. You know, it's hard daily work, meditations, visualizations, pentagram rituals, hexagram rituals, invoking the elements. You know, so that's the solid stuff. The more exciting stuff I'm doing at the moment is working from the Arbitel of Magic, which is the Olympic spirits. So I've only done 2 evocations, but I would say the first one wasn't too successful because I hadn't done the preparatory work properly. Second one far more successful. I'm also working with a Goetia, a very interesting approach to Goetia called Goetia pathworking, where it's all done in your imagination, and it's very simple to do, very effective, I've found. But I find it hard to stick to, you know, almost the first page of that Golden Dawn manual says, read about any other practices you want, but if you really want to succeed with this magic, don't do any other rituals or practices. And of course, I disregarded that from day one. I can't help myself from dipping into things, and that's why I call myself a dilettante, because I do jump about from practice to practice, just experimenting. If it works, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, I'll kind of lay it aside. because I was so hung up on the psychological model, the old grimoires really didn't make much sense. But in the last two, I don't know if you've seen them, but I've been quite pleased with them actually. The last two shows I've done, I've been talking about how I've kind of mashed my modern magic ideas from Robert Anton Wilson and Timothy Leary in with the grimoires, trying to find out what these spirits, angels, and demons are, how they relate to the psychedelic experience, what exactly is the astral plane. You know, I'm a bit of an overthinker. I can't just accept, okay, you go to this magical place. We don't really know what it is or what they are. I like to know, and that's why I'm not doing it to get rich or to get a better job or happily I've found love, so I don't need to look for that anymore. I'm not really so much into results magic. A sigil will do that quite easily. I really want to know, and it's all about knowledge for me. So mixture of Golden Dawn, Golden Dawn. That's a good name for it, actually. Golden Dawn, but with evocations, and I'm slowly putting together like tools, because in traditional magic, tools are very important. Consecrations are very important. But I still don't, I certainly don't subscribe to the Christian worldview anymore. I came up with something the night that I did that sigil, and I couldn't sleep. It was to summon a specific entity. The next day, like a flash of inspiration, I've always been fascinated with William Burroughs and stuff, and his paraphrasing of Hassan Isabaz, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted." And I'd always been, which model is actually right? Which one is the right? And then I thought, hold on, man, aren't you listening? If nothing is true, everything is permitted, then all stories are equally false. The Bible isn't true. The Book of the Law isn't factually true. They're all just fictions. So that makes me free to pick my own fiction. And in Robert Anton Wilson's style, I might as well pick the most interesting, warm, funny reality tunnel I can. So I have now kind of mixed chaos magic with traditional magic and said, okay, I am totally going to believe in spirits and I'm going to make that work.
I love that. Would you give us an idea of what you consider the astral plane to be, and is it separate from the etheric field? Yeah, I think that
That's a
question
very
stands.
difficult one. That's a difficult one. I recently read an excellent book, Psychedelic Shamanism by Jim DeCorner, and I came by that one through Secrets in the Magical Grimoires by Aaron Leach, another excellent book. So, that place that you go on, not necessarily high doses, I just prefer high doses because it just never fails to instantly zap you into that other place. A lot of magicians will say, well, the spirit world's around you all the time, and you just have to kind of be able to see, shift your focus, and that's true to a certain extent. When you take psilocybin, your physical location doesn't change, but how you perceive it does. But I think, I always think in terms of higher dimensions and stuff. I tend to get a bit over intellectual sometimes, I think, but I think the astral plane is a place inside. It's literally a higher dimension inside us. Like if you think of dimensions as one being perpendicular to the next, then any dimensions higher than the three of space and one of time kind of have to be inside. And so it's all around us, but it's also inside us at the same time. And I think this paradox of inside and outside is very important in the psychedelic experience, because paradoxes seem to resolve in that space. The language that ties us into this reality loses importance. Language, English language, to me, when I'm on psilocybin and magically altered states, seems so incapable of describing what reality actually is. So, have I answered the question? I don't think so. I've never come up with answers, only more interesting questions, I think.
Well, you gave us an outline. What I feel like I don't have an idea what your idea of the etheric field is.
The etheric field is like, is that like the? I mean, everybody has such different terminology in occultism, which can be a problem as well. The astral plane is where entities, everything from the manted beings that I've seen to the lion people that I've also seen, to the more classical sort of ideas of angels and demons, exist in this other realm. You know, it's not obvious to us in our everyday consciousness. You know, it's like a shaman thing. You know, like the
Yes.
ayahuasca dudes. I think they would say that these there's usually three worlds. It's like the middle world of normal consciousness, then you've got an upper world of like good spirits, angels, and God, and you know, perhaps pagan gods and all that. And then you've got an infernal or chthonic world where are the more sort of dangerous. Some people call them evil. I don't believe they're necessarily all evil. You know, like the goetic demons and stuff. And you've also got your land of the dead there too. But really, it's all around us all the time. It's just being able to tune into those different frequencies. I think it's like tuning a radio into a specific station.
It's all demons, if you ask me.
It's all demons.
Everything is demons.
That's the folly of it all. How, if you could quantify it in a way, is it in terms of how we experience what we consider the reality plane, this, which, you know, I guess I find myself in the rebel group with what I think this is, but that's another day in another place. How real
I know
are
what
those?
you think it is.
How real do you think the astral and etheric planes are, especially as a magician and one that has also had a good amount, and I think this is to your credit when we're talking about altered states of consciousness, of experience with substances that move you out of the reality that everyone holds on to and puts a gravity towards?
Yeah. Well, I think they are. I mean, at the time when you're in them, they feel realer than this does. You know, there is a truth and a clarity, and meaning becomes so much more apparent than our sometimes weird and disjointed lives. So you could say that that is an ultimate reality. It's like a mystical idea of reality, a higher reality, if you want. It obviously exists, coexists. I've forgotten the question now. I was getting carried away.
Well, the idea of, and you actually just added two, you've brought more into this question, because you said when you're in them, in these etheric or astral magical spaces between time, right, between time and space that get created, that one could also postulate is where the dream state is as well, that it feels very real, and we were tying in the psychedelic experience. However, I just wanted to add to that, when we're in this space right now, which is the apparent reality, where we ascribe all these rules, and there are rules in all these realities, believe it or not, people that do not experience them. There are rules in a psychedelic experience when you're in it. They may seem far out,
strict rules.
but there are rules. And so what you said was really provocative to me, in that it feels real when you're there. Well, this feels real here too. And so that is something I would like to bring forward for people to understand, is the idea of what is real and how reality feels, how palpable it is. And so if you could just expand upon that. So being taking us back to the psychedelic experience and the idea of other realities, other states of consciousness.
Yeah. Well, what I think is happening when you take psychedelics, not only psychedelics, you can reach it through the traditional methods of fasting, meditation, ritual magic, but I always, and I think this is sometimes a lack in me, that I kind of need that psychedelic experience to get me to those extreme places. I mean, how often does a ritual magician meditating, well, maybe they do, but just see all these, actually see them physically there, like a mantid being, which I'll never forget, uh, humanoid beings with lion heads. So what I think is that these beings are all around us all the time, but we're, uh, by necessity, to eat, sleep, have sex, go to work, for whatever reason we have to do those things on this plane. If we were seeing the things that are actually there all the time, we would be so distracted we wouldn't be able to do anything. So it's like, the doors of perception. When the doors of perception are cleansed, man will see things as they are, infinite. So the ritual magic, the fasting, the drumming, the dancing, all these shamanic techniques. But I always think add in a few psychedelics as well, and it always work better. You're removing those filters, and you're seeing more of reality instead of this. It's like wearing blinkers, so you can only see what you really need to see to survive. It's all really nicely explained in Leary. He came up with it. Robert Anton Wilson kind of tinkered with it a bit. The eight circuit model of consciousness, where the first four are like all adult humans have them. The biosurvival, the socio-sexual, the time-binding symbol-using circuit. The fourth is, I can't even remember what the fourth is. And then as you get 5, 6, 7, and 8, that's when you start to open up into these expanded states of consciousness, which Leary believed was preparing us for space travel. A lot of different theories about it. They reckon that like transcendental meditation will get you to these higher circuits. Psychedelics definitely do. Ritual magic techniques definitely do. So it's there. It's always there. It's always all around us, but we're just very rarely aware of it because we need to survive as human primates.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This idea of reality that we get into, and pure materialists, I just often wonder. I mean, we know scientifically, if people need that we're very limited in sensate information that comes in, and that there's more going on around us. And so
Oh
this is
yeah.
always the issue for me with materialists that say this is the end all be all, end of case, shut the book, no more talking. So, and that
I mean, the very
frustrates
fact
me.
that, yeah, I mean, the world is made up of swirling atoms and neutrons, which we can't see, but we're pretty sure that that's how it is. I know people balk at the idea of applying ideas of quantum science, which nobody really understands unless you're a quantum physicist yourself. But I do think that they have some application to understanding reality, altered states of consciousness. Again, I come back to paradoxes because I think I haven't quite unpicked that yet, but I think there's a lot of power in the idea of these kind of impossible things being resolved somehow. It's hard to talk about these things, it's notoriously hard.
Yeah.
Just
Oh
to put
yeah,
them into language. Yeah.
it's still, I was thinking about this today, how difficult it is to really accurately describe these other experiences, especially in the times we're in, where language is breaking down, and where it's like we're through the looking glass of time, and everything is in verse. Bad means good, and sick means fantastic, and
Yeah.
like there's
That's
it's
strange phenomena, isn't it? How we're reversing language.
yes, it's interesting. It's very Wonderland in that sense. I'm also wondering now, I want to traverse the idea of stepping into the artistic muse and that state of consciousness where we find ourselves swimming in pure creative energy. And how does that, because you are an artist and you're a very wonderful artist at that, how do those moments when you really truly feel embedded or imbued or blanketed or possessed or inspired by magical sparkly muse energy to create something, and is that a different state of consciousness for you? Do you get downloads? Do you just go at it? What's the process in arting for you, and how does that tie into all of this otherness?
This is where it absolutely all came from, I think. I got such a hit off of a need to be creative from a very young age. After that, I hate to keep talking about psychedelics. It's not all about psychedelics, but it just all seemed to, it just caused such an explosion in my brain. And not long after that very potent first one in the Duthie Park, when I was talking to trees and the air was full of alive things, I got very interested in visual art. I saw Van Gogh, or Van Gogh as you Americans call him, and the colors and the wavy lines, and I thought, geez, that guy was tripping all the time. Obviously, I think schizophrenia is very close to an uncontrolled, and these people sadly don't want to be in this state of mind all the time. So I immediately made the connection between altered states of consciousness and creativity, and chased that. I wasn't interested in magic for magic's sake. It wasn't like I didn't want to be a kind of find God or anything like that. I wanted to be better at art and to be able to express myself better, to make better music, to make better paintings. Like, what I took from Crowley was that he had found a system to kind of induce genius, and I wanted to pursue anything that would make me. It's like the classic story of selling your soul to the devil to make you a good violin player or a brilliant artist. I'm also fascinated by Picasso. I love painting. It's my favorite medium, really. Although I'm really enjoying music at the moment as well. But it's so fleeting, you can have those moments of inspiration, and then the muse will desert you for weeks, months sometimes, and you won't be able to pick up a pen. Writing is another passion of mine, poetry, and I attempt prose sometimes. I actually wrote pretty much a third of a novel about. It was quite fan fiction-y in a way. It didn't start out like that. I thought, right, I'm going to use Crowley as a fictional character. I'd heard that if you put a swastika on a book cover, this is how hungry I was for fame and success and money. I thought, okay, I need Nazis in there somewhere. That thing about Rudolf Hess and how Crowley was supposed to have worked with Ian Fleming to put a spell on Rudolf Hess to get him to fly over to Britain on that weird mission he did. I'm not sure if you know about that, but I started to write a novel on that. It was going really well. And then I was still in my addiction phase at that time, and I got so desperate one day, I swapped the laptop without backing it up, without really caring, for a tiny little bit of you know what, and I lost the whole novel. I've still got like a couple of fragments on my blog, but
Oh,
yeah,
that
I've gone
is
off on a tangent
that
there, but
says, I know, but what
that says it all, doesn't it? Really.
yes. Oh, indeed. I'm actually, there's nothing to say because that says it all. Wow. Yeah.
That's
There's,
how that shit works, man.
it is.
I kind
Well,
of sold
there's,
my soul to it for a while.
yes, well, we make contracts constantly when we don't realize it, and
Yeah.
that's part of the trickery in life in general. And then when we start working with magic, and then when we start diving into all this other stuff, we don't realize how often we're actually making contracts. So every time you scored,
Yeah.
you were making a contract with that substance.
Yeah, and when it first presents itself, I mean, we really came from like a club scene where the dance, the Summer of Love and all that MDMA had it kind of made it okay to take harder drugs. Where me and my friends, although we were quite wild, we would take mushrooms, smoke weed, drink, but that opened the door to all the other drugs. And when it first came, we'd smoke on the tinfoil, like a beautiful angel had come into my life. There was no worry, everything was comfortable. It was like living in a dream. And then when it's got you, it suddenly shows its evil side. It's like something out of a horror film. It's like, comes on like an angel, and then you find out that it's actually a demon that is sucking your soul.
The fang is a needle. The fang is a needle.
Yes, I've often thought of, it's a metaphor for vampirism as well. There's a lot of sharp things, piercing flesh and veins and blood, and you're all white and you kind of stumble about in this twilight all the time. I often wonder if, that decadent kind of, although they weren't, well, no, Bram Stoker, there would have been intravenous use by then, but I've always thought there was a metaphor. Vampirism is a metaphor for addiction in some weird way. But like all my ideas, it's not very well thought out.
Oh, it's absolutely a metaphor, because vampires are addicted to blood.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's thought out. It's out there in the world. It's one of the things I was curious about here is the idea of how, so when you're doing all this, you're dancing not only with the devil, you're dancing with death. And metaphorically with the devil, metaphorically with death, but actually it can be literally with death.
Oh yeah, I mean, a few of my friends did actually die, and I almost did once.
Can you give us the story of your experience of almost dying?
This is very strange, and I didn't know how I managed, because I was clean for about 2 weeks. It was round about that. I mean, I did my degree when I was pretty much, still pretty hardcore user, but it was round about the time I'd left, and for some miracle, I managed to be completely clean for about 2 weeks. And I had this very perverse urge, because I knew I was clean and I would get one hell of a hit, to go out and score. And a friend of mine, helped me to get it. And we both kind of knew that I was going to OD that day. We were kind of almost talking about it, a bit like an as if. But thinking back, I knew that was going to happen that day, and kind of so did he. And I get the feeling that he kind of wanted the vicarious thrill of watching it happen, and it did happen. And I was thinking about this today, because I thought the subject would probably come up, and it was very profound. I mean, you've got to remember that opiates do make you feel like you're kind of, not saying to anyone to try them, for God's sake, don't. They're absolutely the most destructive substance in the world, but they do make you feel extremely euphoric and like you've died and gone to heaven. But this time I did. So I literally, the cliche story, I did the thing. I saw blackness just gathering at the edges of my vision. I presumably passed out. I saw this, it was literally like my body was rising up into this bright, bright light, but it was clouds, as cliched as that sounds. And then just this gorgeous feeling in my body of just kind of being free of everything. And it was the most euphoric feeling I've ever had in my whole life on planet Earth. And then I woke up with a paramedic, like one on each side, and one like staring down into me. They'd given me that shot that they give people on the tracks alone or whatever, and I came round, and that was that. But that's the only time that's ever happened. I had quite a high tolerance for most of the time, so I really wasn't the kind that would be collapsing and gouging out all the time. But that time, that certainly happened. But it's weird how we talked about it, the possibility of it, and I still went ahead and did it. And I don't know. Some things I can't really explain why I did them.
So here where you are now, what are your ideas? And so I'd like to tie this into the dreamscape as well. And I know you've already given us an idea of, you're chasing the dragon in your dreams often, and which is common for people in recovery, and a constant, a thing. It's a thing. Uh but
Yeah.
what are your ideas around death, and where do you stand with that now? So I just don't care where you came from with it. I'm interested in it, in your ideas of it now. What is it? Where do we go? What do you think about it? Where are you with it?
Well, I have to say, I don't really fear it at all. I feel like the experiences I've had in my life have not only prepared me, but I think there is definitely some kind of existence after that the body dies. I've got no basis for this. I do feel like some of my, again, profound and heavy psychedelic experiences have been like dying. There's the confusion of, I've described it before as being suddenly dropped into a really deep, murky ocean, and you have to negotiate these kind of demonic, lower world, chthonic entities, like I've read in like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You've got to know the passwords. Also, Burroughs' Western Lands was pretty influential in my thinking about that. I don't think it's an easy passage. You don't float up to heaven suddenly and start playing a harp. We only have to look at how ancient cultures who were much more in touch with the other world than we were are. You need currency. You need to know your shit. You need to kind of know what to expect. You need to kind of prepare for death. Like the Tibetan chod rites and all that. So I think the journey after death is perilous, and I think not all souls make it. I've read some fantastic stuff in that psychedelic shamanism book about this idea of these higher entities. You could call them archons, although I don't believe in that very dark worldview that everything is totally run by archons. But there are these spiritual entities that feed off our belief and our prayers. I think that's what a lot of the totally fundamental, hardcore, joyless religions are about. Jehovah in the Old Testament wanted burnt offerings, energy to keep him alive. I think we're predated on, like we predate on plants and animals. They're just the lower kingdoms. There's a pecking order. That's another idea that's very strong in Solomonic traditional magic, is this idea of hierarchies of spiritual beings. But I think not all of them are nice, and some of them will gobble our souls up as food. So we have to learn to avoid that by either making some kind of deal with them, being useful to them. We are not the top of the food chain by a long shot when it comes to spiritual creatures. So I don't know if that's an answer, but that's about as
Yeah,
close as I
yeah,
can get.
definitely. And I love that you bring in the Solomonic stuff, which all these subjects are subjects these are waters I swim in as well as a seeker. And I have always found the Solomonic stuff quite provocative in revealing that we are on a chain. And I know I
Yeah,
encounter this idea of hubris around all the time. We all do here, where so many humans really buy into their ideas of dominion, and that they're just
yeah,
utterly at the top. And if you dive into Solomonic stuff, which is very old, uh and when
yeah.
we start talking jinn and all this other stuff from over in the Middle East, we are not on the top of the
Far from
chain.
it. No.
And
Maybe
so
somewhere in the middle. I believe we do have some there's a story of like how God created. These are metaphors and stories, and nothing is true, everything is permitted. But we do have some kind of authority. We're not just animals, but there are definitely a few ranks above us. That's for sure.
Well, we're cunning, and that's, we're definitely not on the bottom either. But it's still a lot for some people that are very indoctrinated into the idea that we're the top, both here in this reality and in the afterlife. So I appreciate you bringing that in, and I just encourage people to, if nothing else, look into some of these other ideas of alternate realities that are ancient, and alternate realities that have been a long time in the works, longer than some of the stuff that people are buying into now. So for example, Christianity, and everyone knows I'm open to Christianity. I love it too. The Bible's a very juicy tome. So when you have, in your life of dreaming, Stevie, have you encountered the dead? Have you encountered others that are not you and part of your own psyche?
I not in dreams, but one day, I've never talked about this before. I've kind of wanted to possibly bring it up, but then I've shied away from it a bit. But one day, when I was at a real low point in my life, and I was drinking heavily, I was also using this, that, and the other thing, and I'd been kind of cooped up in my flat for days. I was extremely depressed, and I had this experience where I sensed two presences, let's say that, two female presences, right? And I started to kind of communicate. I mean, I think it was more alcohol, but I think maybe the aftermath of other stuff. But I got the story that they were trapped spirits, and I wrote it off as like, oh, you were just kind of fantasizing and tripping. But now I'm starting, with the new sort of realizations that are coming in, I'm thinking, well, they could have very well been genuinely dead souls who had committed suicide. I shy away from it because it's so kind of morbid and creepy. But and it was two women, and I absolutely, it felt like I was sitting with two normal human women, except I knew they were dead because they were telling me they were. They weren't quite as tangible and solid as we were, but it was an absolutely real experience to me. They gave me the kind of life stories. One of them told me a very sad story. So that happened. So not in my dream life. Like I say, my dream life is a bit disappointing, to be honest. I worried about coming on the show because I thought, well, shit, not much happens in my dreams, to be honest. It's in my waking life that the interesting stuff happens. But yeah, there was that. So, yeah.
And thank you for sharing that, by the way.
I've never told that story.
I was a little bit thrilled when you said that, because you're very candid on your station, and it's it gave me a little bit of the sparklies when you said that, because you are very candid, and this is one of the things that I think draws a lot of people to you, is how raw and real you are, and we need more of that, of course. So also with this, where we are, I want to just kind of wrap. And so I haven't been looking at the chat, although I have it open on the side so I can see that it's there, but I just can't focus on both things. And I wonder where you are with the idea of, and this is the woo, and I have to wrap this in, and anyone that knows me knows this. Where are you with the idea of what is this otherness that is possibly in the world? And there's a million ways we can wrap it. It's AI, it's ETs from Pleiades, it's inner earth reptiles that are intelligence, whatever, ghosts, all this other than us stuff, aside from what we have brought forth today in this chat.
It could be all of the above. It could be one thing. I mean, if we are so close to the spirit world as we undoubtedly are, there's bound to be a bleed through, I'm not sure. I mean, I also have this weird feeling that kind of past, present, and future have already happened somehow. So AI has always been here. There's also the fact that we could be living in a simulation that is seriously considered by some pretty advanced scientists. To give you a simple answer, I know it's there, but I couldn't tell you what it is. Reptilians, there's such a strong archetypal. I've seen giant snake talking things.
Those are the Nagas.
Riddled with.
The snakes are the Nagas, right?
This was like a huge. Yeah. This was a huge female kind of teaching serpent who chided me about. I had a, when you go through that silly stage of magic where you want to start calling yourself Frater something or other, I picked Frater Sanctus Coluber, which means holy snake. And
that's so pompous.
The holy snake wasn't too happy about me. God. So she wasn't happy about that. So yeah, I honestly think now, after coming out of this materialist straitjacket that I was in, I'm open to any ideas that I couldn't say. I know they're there. I don't know what they are.
That's the thing, and this is part of why the world is still very mysterious to me, is that I really feel that there's so much there that we don't know, and I think a lot of people understand that there's more here, and I don't know, and I definitely understand why we need to stay pragmatic about things and reasonable about things to get on in life, but it is an important idea to not do what so many parents do to their children, where we get indoctrinated into, no, that's not real. The realist, the materialist mindset is very restrictive, and I think it's doing no one any favors. What a sad world it is when we break it down in that kind of Bajas way. It's very dystopian. Where are we with it?
Exactly. I mean, look at the dreadful state of the world at the moment. Ecological meltdown, political leaders who are leading us to the precipice of destruction. If people could embrace the idea that we're not the fucking cock of the walk, we might be able to start putting this. And now, you know what? I'm starting to think that the Pleiadians were right about that ecological message, and I just wasn't ready to hear it.
I know.
But now maybe I need to pick up my swords.
Stevie, I'm so with you.
Because we are in a desperate state.
We are indeed
fucked up, man. And we need
I
to
think
get
no
our
matter
shit sorted
what,
out, to use a bit of profanity.
Yes, I'm sorry to talk over you there. Yeah, no matter what, we couldn't
That's
have
okay.
a year ago thought, we would be in these kind of circumstances where we were locked in, locked down, with the boot at our face. And so there's a silver lining in that if you're conscious, you're starting to question what the hell is going on. So with that, Jared, do we have questions for our good Saroth?
Not that I've seen.
Saroth,
I'm quite happy
I'm
to
sure that
end it there. That was fantastic.
Saroth, I'm sure the chat is filled with everyone you know and love, because it's pretty much the same community.
It is in the whole Scottish rite is here.
we have Scottish contingent in the house.
Contingent
yes,
is here. Yeah.
It's strange how many how many Scots there are in this little community.
I know.
Very few English people, you'll notice. The Sassenachs.
Yes, it's a lot, and that's my favorite part of my mix is the Scottish mix, the Bane in me. It's always what I've vibed with the most. Of course, I think it's actually the most magical in the end.
Oswald wanted to say that you look quite Pictish warrior in your picture. Your picture looks like a Pictish warrior.
Well, it's certainly not you, Saroth.
No, that's Sitting Bull.
Yeah, this is a Pictish, a Native American named Sitting Bull, who was a great hero, by the way. I still have
a great hero of mine. That's why I've got his picture up there.
We Cannot Sell the Earth and all that. Oh, that's Chief Seattle. There's so many. Sitting Bull was one of the great heroes too. Yeah, me too. I've put him in a couple of my videos. But
I got a legit question.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So Oswald wants to know if you agree with Thomas Sheridan. I got two questions now. In that Scots and Irish are the same culturally / genetically.
I never agree with Thomas Sheridan. Just on point, on principle. But yeah, I think so, definitely. Apart from the Irish aren't as intelligent as the Scots, obviously.
Oh shit.
Shots fired.
I'm staying out of this.
My flippant answer.
I'm staying out.
All right, and then Philip Blair wants to know if you're working on any experiments at the moment.
Yes, tell us what you have
I'm
in the works.
always working on many experiments.
Which kind of feeds into the whole anything to plug.
Yeah. Oh gosh, can I just tell you, I've got some really exciting guests coming on to my show. I mean, I don't really do a lot of guests, but I just seem to have harvested. I had a high energy day the other day, and people were just totally getting in touch.
Tell it,
so
brother.
I've got BJ Swain. Is anybody author of Living Spirits? An OTO. He's a fantastic guy. Very willing to, teach and help younger, less experienced magicians on the path. I've got Dr. Al Cummins, who just released a book on Scarlet Imprint. It's a collection of manuscripts from 1567. The excellent book, The Art of Magic. He's fucking a genius.
I just bought that book.
I've got Arundel Overman. Oh yeah, I've got it as well. Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, Arundel Overman's
cool
cool
too.
too.
The paperback. I've got. Yeah, he's coming on, and I've also got a lady called Carol McCoy, a Scots compatriot of mine, expert in the Fae, practicing Scottish witch for 30 years, self-professed daughter of Pan. And of course, my magical experiments never cease. My consciousness experiments never cease. My musical experiments, poetry, writing, it all never ever ceases.
All you need is Stephen Skinner, to make the trifecta there of awesome authors.
I might give him a call, He's been down to get on the show for ages, but I really can't find time for the man. I'm only joking. He's like Saint Skinner of the magical community.
I know.
Like
you don't mess with Skinner.
I love this lineup. So people may find you on your YouTube channel, Saroth the Mage Experiment, correct?
Link in the description.
Yes.
And your blog is still up, isn't it?
It's still up. It's it's so patchy. I really should. It is neglected. I did put up a kind of new post, but it's more of like a online notebook, really. Again, I'm not great at finishing things, so I've got a lot of kind of half thought out stuff. But it's I don't think that really things need resolution and pinning down all the time. I like the idea of kind of open, multiplicitous stuff. It's just an excuse for being lazy and never finishing things. But.
And your Twitter handle is?
Saroth 222, isn't it? I don't know.
It is.
I'm going off Twitter, actually.
It is.
Yeah.
Jerry has all that stuff.
I prefer Facebook nowadays. Yeah.
Oh God, I'll never go back to Facebook.
Yeah, I'm going to close my Facebook account very soon.
I'm so proud of you, Jer.
No, honestly, for there's some really good magic groups going on where there's a lot of knowledge going on there for anyone who's interested in magic out there. Maybe not so much for everybody else, but the magic heads will get something out of it if they join the right groups.
Yeah, the groups were great. I do miss that. I just don't like Facebook as a whole. But that's another rant.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been a great pleasure to finally have you here, and the timing was just right, as it always is.
And thank you for staying up late to be on the show.
Oh, I know. I'm really
You're tuckered.
trying to get to bed, but it's been. I am. I probably won't sleep because I rarely do after shows. I get so excited. Well, thank you very much, guys, for having me.
Thank you.
You know, I'll come back on any old time.
Great. We'll have you back on the obelisk sometime. Speaking of which, next week we have an obelisk on the full moon. It's a special full moon too. It's like the
first eclipse. Yeah.
There's something weird about it. It's like the 12th.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. It's going to be a wild week next week. So be sure to.
But Jerry, I want to interject there. So next week's kind of like it's officially an obelisk, and it's got Michael Deacon from the Michael Deacon program.
No, it does not.
It does on my calendar, and that's what we had agreed on.
I heard,
who does it have on yours?
We have Vahali Seeliger next week.
I'll have to look because I just confirmed this again with Michael. He keeps getting pushed back.
No,
all right, I'll let that be.
Michael's on the 17th of June.
Okay, and that's not what I'm seeing, but this doesn't need to be on the front page. So go on with it, Jer.
Where was I now? That you've interrupted me, damn it. No.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Next week's an obelisk, so be sure to tune in for that. We will be back on our regular channel next week. We're out of the penalty box tomorrow. Yay.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I hate having to download this video and put it up on that channel. It's all a bunch of bullshit, but whatever.
It has been a learning experience.
Fucking YouTube. Okay. Anyway, everyone have a wonderful night. Good week. Remember to not wear a mask. Don't be a slave.
Wait a
All right. I'm staying out of the politics right now.
And we'll talk to you next week. Take care.
Goodbye.
Okay, guys. Thanks very much.